Okay, my name is Irina, and I'm an independent contractor, and I want to tell you the story from my previous project. And the story is related to this short-term electricity consumption forecast under COVID-19 lockdown conditions. In the first place, I will tell you the story. So, I was working for IT company and doing forecast service for this company. And on the 1st of March, one of the utility, a supplier, the company which buys electricity purchases on the wholesale market and sells it on retail market or to the end user, we call the supplier, decided to buy a new solution for the forecast, for the consumption forecast. And why it's so important it announced the competition. So this supplier decided to make a competition, and it's announced on the 1st March of 2020. Yeah, so we decided to take part in this competition. And then, like in the middle of March, I think we all remember that March, because starting from the end of February, and then week by week, country after country, they stated the lockdown, and people were locked in their premises. And well, it was quite depressing time because no one knew what was going to be next. And at the end of March, we realized that we're going to have lockdown in Russia too. And competition had started at 1st of April. So like at the end of March, I was heading to the competition, and I knew that I'm going to face the lockdown, and I have no idea how to explain to my model what is the lockdown, because we've never had it in history. Then, starting from the 21st of March, we had a lockdown, and it ended up in Russia at 1st of June, in the same time where we had the end of the competition. And we have the time step in the middle when we have some restrictions were relaxed for some activities, and we might say that we have lockdown, which consists of 2 steps. Yeah, and if we go back to the end of March, there was a 3 question in my head. Do I need to change my forecast approach? How do I explain to my model that tomorrow is the first day, like new reality? And what do I do if these lockdowns will be prolonged? The goal of my presentation is to answer these 3 questions based on experience I had with this competition. The details is published in my scientific blog and available online. So it contains a lot of details and could be interesting for electricians. What is the real-time power consumption forecast? Yeah, consumption, demand, load, it's the same term. I will use the consumption. So the thing is that in Russia, the wholesale market designed the way that the supplier do the forecast only to be to their head market. We don't have continuous trading phase, and the pricing on the balancing market is designed the way that all the deviation between actual consumption and their head will be paid by loss-making price. So that's like these rules pushing the supplier to forecast more accurate. And the more accurate your forecast is, the lower electricity cost will be. So it's like very straight thing from the forecast quality to money. You can calculate it easily. That's why supplier kind of pay attention to the quality of the forecast. And the competition rules corresponds fully to their head bidding business process. So day by day, at certain point, we receive the most actual values. In a few minutes, we made the forecast, and then we submit it to the supplier. In the same time, supplier did their own business. They made like forecast on their own, and then they just collected the forecast from the competitors. And in the end, they kind of announced the result. I need to say that I have signed the NDA and I'm not allowed to say the name of the supplier, and I'm not allowed to say, to show you any results except of mine. Yeah, I tried to get some results, but I was not successful in that. So here we have like basic framework. So we have bidding at 13:30, and we have forecast horizon like for 24 hours ahead. So this is what we call short-term consumption forecast. By the time when the competition started, I have already developed what I call a forecast service. This is a Python software which works as software as a service. And this framework, which is software framework, could be fed with data either from plain files or via APIs. So I can connect with other services using APIs. The main feature of the forecast service I designed is that it contains 5 independent models, like blocks, and then you can combine in the end those blocks to achieve the high accuracy. So let me go quickly through the blocks. I'm having seasonality. This is the simplest one, and it's like regression-based traditional one. I have temperature model, which is piecewise linear temperature with additional regressors like trend or sinus-like function. I have holiday model. This is simple averaging, and I will discuss this model later. I have after regression. It's also very, very classical one, but we use high order up to several hundreds. And the last one is the most complicated and advanced one. It's a neural network based on this Python Keras TensorFlow infrastructure. I use feed-forward neural network, and this is it. While I was developing and making tryouts, and I also participated in the previous competition, I defined 2 sets of the model, which are called stacks. So when I combine those 2 as blocks, and then I have a stacks which is called R3, which contains 3 regressions and a holiday model. And I have stack which is called R&R, which contains regression, in seasonality neural network, and auto-regression. These 2, for a lot of areas, perform more or less comparable. So I keep them, and what I did in the end to achieve like the best possible accuracy, I combine them using weighted averages in the end. So it was like small blocks, we combine it in stacks, and then we combine in the end the results of the stack. This is what was done before the competition. Then, when it was announced that we're going to have a lockdown too, from blocks, because nothing except for the block was available, at that point, I found out that we will face the consumption drop. For example, in Italy, drop was about 20%. In Spain, it was around 6%. Later on, I made some review and I found out that it could be like for a certain area in India, the drop in consumption was around 46%, twice lower than it used to be before lockdown. For example, for the easiest area in my competition, we had the drop only 3%. So at the beginning of lockdown, you could never imagine the steepness of the drop you're gonna face. So the only thing that you know that you have to, probably you have to model it as a non-regular days or holidays where we have like regular drop because of people not active at that period. These non-regular definitions are used in 2 models. So in the first, it's a neural network model, and in a holiday model. The holidays, all non-regular days, are defined in a special table. So I have just this simple CSV file, which contains the date, the type points, what kind of date is it? Is it replacement date or is it actually holiday? Then group contains the set of the consecutive holidays. For example, in March, we have like 2 holidays, 2 days, included in one group. And then numbering group, which actually indicates the number of holidays within the group for a certain year. And in neural network, this table is used straightforwardly. It's just 3 other features. In a holiday model, it's like a bit more simple than a neural network. I use only group parameters. And what do I do? This picture explains. What you see on the picture is that this is a gray line. This is the result of the seasonality and temperature modeling. And we see that for the March holidays, these are March holidays for 4 years. Sometimes it contains 2 days, sometimes just 1. It depends on the year. And we see that this light green is actual consumption. And we see it's regularly deviates from the seasonality and temperature. And this like adjustments is done like an average, an hourly average value. So this step that you see that's on the right-hand side boxes, this is the result of holiday model. It's just the value, how I adjust my result of seasonality and temperature to get closer to reality. And the result is this blue line. You see that it's much closer to reality. And I decided, so I had like 2 things in my hand, how I should, combine these non-regular days. And I decided that I will include the first day of lockdown the same way as March holiday because it was the closest one. March holiday was the closest to the lockdown. So I put it in group number 5. Then I defined that the time is going to be 1 for the working days because still something was active. And it's going to be 2 for weekends. And the number in group will represent just day of week. This is how we prepared. And we trained our model and was ready to start competition. We started and we failed. By the 10th of March, we were told, like orally, that we had the weakest results from the competitors. And it made me feel like I need to do some changes. And I made comprehensive analysis of the first days of lockdown and trying to find out how I should change my model because I clearly saw that the necessity of the changes. So in the first place, I looked closely on this holiday model. On the picture on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that this is the drop. This is the profile of March holiday I showed you earlier, the green line. And the average lockdown drop was much higher. So during the lockdown, consumption dropped further than usual holidays. And this is what you can see from the picture. And like this drop, this deviation between 2 drops comes up to 6% in certain areas. And I just decided that the holiday model is not efficient. I cannot use this like simple averaging for lockdown. For the neural network, we found that okay, the forecast, which is gray, on average looks fine, but it has some slight ups and downs, and this, which I call ripples. After some discussion, I realized that the ripples is the result of non-balancing training set. When I trained the model, there was only 12 days for March holiday in the whole training set, and only 6 of them were replacement days. So, in other words, there were not enough data to train my neural network to do proper job. What can I do about that? In the first place, this R3 step with the holiday model was abandoned. So I decided I don't want to use it any longer. The second thing, to improve neural network performance, I use so-called scaffold cross-validation. Cross-validation is when we split our training set into subsets and train different models. But you cannot apply cross-validation at that point because you still don't have enough data. What did we do? We had the same train set, but we retrain model with different initial weights. So we have like 5 neural networks, 5 networks which are trained on the same train set, but with different initial weights. It gives you 5 different models in the end, and it allows you to avoid the ripple. So how do we do that? I was training the model on my computer. I have a junior who supported me in the project, and she trained on her computer. And then we make a forecast for a certain horizon. And we stopped when we found out that the mean average deviation between these two forecasts on 2 different computers is below 1 megawatt hour. At that point, we say, okay, the result looks smooth and it looks repeatable. And another thing which I made came from my curiosity. I asked myself, how would this RNR stack have performed if it had not known anything about the lockdown? So if we use the calendar where we remove all the lockdowns, how this neural network will feel like? Because neural network and auto-regression model, they are actually based on these lag variables. And it should be that at some point it will catch up. I made the backtests, and the backtest showed that I was correct. At some point, model which is trained blindly to lockdown, which knows nothing about lockdown, and the model which is parameterized for lockdown have very similar results. And I applied this weighted averaging, which is already was included in the framework for these two. So I have this RNR, which is blind, and this RNR with lockdown, which knows everything about lockdown. And this changes, this what I'm explaining to you, it took like a couple of weeks. So it was very stressful time for me. Another challenge, what we faced in this competition is that we faced this so-called May bunch holiday. And then here, what I did, I just simply combined this is group number 20, this is for lockdown. At some point, we introduced a new one. And then this is how I parameterize that. So I combine the holiday definition and the lockdown definition in the table. The results of the competition, I just quickly go through. This is on the left-hand side in the table. We had in the competition 4 independent areas. So we haven't done this like simple one forecast. We made 4 forecasts at some point at each point. And we see that how the error reduces from using those blocks. So one less seasonality, we have error like 6.25. Then the error of this seasonality goes to temperature. And the temperature model reduces errors to 484. Then the error of the temperature goes to holiday. And in the end, after regression puts the error to 2.09%. We can see similar behavior for RNR steps. So this is how these blocks are consist. And this is the results of for April and May for competition. I cannot compare with anyone else because I have never seen other results. And the thing is that what I can point it out that the error during the competition is almost twice higher than the training one. This is the training table which was obtained before lockdown started. Daily forecast error. This chart, this spaghetti chart, illustrates how it all happened. First, we had higher than 3%. At some point, we have this kick and switch off period, which also quite volatile. But in the second half of April, we see that average error reduces after we applied everything we developed. Then we have this May holiday where we have 4.21, and we were told that even having 4.21, we were the best for the May holiday. And it was quite stable till the end of May, except for one region where we have like extreme temperature conditions for end of May. And my answers, do I need to change my forecast approach? If you use regression or model holidays or non-regular days the similar way I do, or you use some dummy regressors in functions which someone else is doing, you should probably change the approach and you should pay attention to the quick compact model from the reference. And if you do not, if you use the neural network, then you can keep it. You don't have to change anything. How do I explain to the model that tomorrow is the first day of new reality? at first stage, you should use these non-regular day definitions as from the nearest holiday or at the beginning of lockdown, which is now history. You can pick this up. Then, when you have several days of days of new reality available, you should update your holidays feature. So you have to introduce new group, and you have to put this group into calculation. And then you definitely need to apply this scaffold and cross-validated neural network to make sure that your results are neat and repeatable. And what you should do if a new reality is prolonged. In the first place, you can combine different stages of the lockdown if necessary. And in the second, you should continually monitor behavior of the model, which is trained blindly to lockdown, because at some point they will get closer. When you have two models close, then you can apply combination weighted averages, or you can choose just one if you want to simplify that process of calculation. This is it. That's it. I would like to say in the end, so we won the competition. I was told that our results in the end was the best, but the supplier didn't buy anything. Not sure why. And still, I'm here today and I'm very happy about that. So I do not consider I have lost anything at all. I'm from Russia, so no worries.
Maybe one question? Sorry. We can discuss, of course, afterwards, after the session.
Congrats for your nice presentation. I'm just wondering if we could, I mean, you sort of forecasting the total load, right? What about considering sort of the different quality of the consumption, like residential, commercial, industrial, because they behave differently during the lockdown period. That's what we do when we have to do not a competition like yours, but when I have to do this forecast for the load, we knew that residential would increase, commercial would go down, industrial, and so. I mean, this is just a point I want to make.
Okay, good question. Thank you. I explained why I can't do that, because consider. See, this is the business process of what you do. You need the most recent actual consumption, and those you're talking about will be available much later. All those measurement systems, when it comes to splitting to the residential or industrial stuff like that, they work much slower. In the real business, you cannot wait, you know. For the research sake, you do. But in the real process, the upper level goes the first, and then you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are already late, so let's discuss afterwards.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.